Good morning, everyone. Actually, I think it's just gone afternoon. Good afternoon. Would you raise your hands if you went to the talk this morning, the plenary session, where a wonderful young woman, Fizeka, spoke? Great. So I don't have to do my presentation then, because she's basically said everything. Seriously, though, this is my first presentation at a conference, so this is a practice run, and I'm going to do it anyway, so please bear with me. This morning, before I saw her presentation, I was going to say I wear two hats here today. The one of the school doctor who works with the Department of Health in Cape Town, and the hat of PhD student at the University of the Western Cape. But after her talk, I realized I wear a third hat this afternoon, and that is the hat of the advocate for young people. She asked this morning, who's our voice? And I'm hoping that my presentation will give learners a voice. At the beginning of the year, the Department of Health announced that they would be rolling out the HIV counseling and testing campaign into secondary schools. At that stage, NGOs in Cape Town were already providing HCT services in secondary schools since at least 2006. And at that stage, I had already conducted my research asking the question, what are the perceived needs of learners with regards to school-based HIV counseling and testing provision? To answer this question, I conducted focus groups in 6 schools. At each school, I did 2 focus groups, one with grade 8 and 9 learners and another with grade 10 and 11 learners. There were a total of 91 learners, 57% of which were female and included learners from diverse cultural and socioeconomic backgrounds. The focus groups were guided by the following questions. Do you think the school is the best place to do HCT? And could you give your reasons for your answer? And what would you like to experience when you go for HIV counseling and testing at school? The learners responded that the best place to do HCT is at school and during school hours. Learners felt that they wanted HCT to be done at schools as they thought it was most convenient and accessible to them. As you can see, a male 19-year-old learner said, in other places, clinics are scarce and people don't get a chance to go to the clinic. Learners also said that they wouldn't want to stay after school. They had other activities after school. They wouldn't come in on weekends to have testing done, and that during school time would be the most convenient for them. Another reason for not wanting to test at clinics, but rather at schools, Fizeka also mentioned this morning, she spoke about the gossipers at the clinics. A female 17-year-old said, if you do go to the clinic, maybe some women, you have told yourself that you don't want your mother to know, you were not ready to tell her, the other woman is going to say, oh no, your child was at the clinic. What was she doing there? She was sitting on the other side for people who go to test. When stating that they wanted to be tested at schools, learners invariably added the proviso, as long as it's done in the right way. They explained why it was so important that the testing be done in the right way. A 17-year-old female learner said, because young people, they don't want this kind of thing to be seen by others. She was referring to HIV testing. A 16-year-old female explained, as a young person, something that is extremely important for us is what people think about us, whether it is at school or at home. When describing what they meant by the right way, learners most commonly expressed a need to be tested in a space that provided both auditory and visual privacy. They particularly did not like being tested in the school hall, as is the case at the moment. A 16-year-old male learner explained this. About the privacy, I do think they need a room, like different rooms for each counselor. This cubicle thing is just too open. It's just too public. The whole grade behind you, like a few meters behind you, and there you've just heard that you're positive, and the person right behind you. They also wanted to know that confidentiality would be honored. They only wanted the counselor to know their status. A 14-year-old male said, I'd like him, referring to the counselor, to be the only person that knows my HIV status. They didn't want the nurse or the receptionist to know their status, and they didn't want a paper trail to be left at the school. They also wanted their privacy respected. A learner said, they mustn't ask if you had sex. That's your own private stuff. A 17-year-old female said, maybe they ask you now, are you sexually active? Now you say yes. Then they ask you, when last did you have sex? You had sex yesterday last. You don't know how to tell her because she's a big person and you're telling her now. They also wanted providers who have experience and training in working with young people. They wanted the counselors to be easy to talk to and friendly and non-judgmental. A 17-year-old female said, the person you're talking to must make you feel comfortable. The way they talk to you, you must be able to talk. They must be able to make you open up to them. A person that won't say, if for example, maybe you were someone when you have sex, you don't like using condoms, or you were someone who likes partying, a person that is not going to judge you. The age of the counselor was also something that was often mentioned. Some learners preferred a young counselor, as they felt that a young counselor would be more easy for them to relate to and would understand what it was like to be young. A 14-year-old male said, I would choose a person between 20 and 30 years because a person in that age is going to understand. You won't be able to talk about sex with an older person. Other learners preferred an older, and I must add here, I asked, what do you mean by older? Or old, not older. And they said anyone about the age of 30 years. Learners, a 17-year-old female, said, older counselors have much more experience and they know exactly what to say. Because us young people, just think, you're just 2 years older, what do you know? So they felt that the older counselor would have more experience. Learners didn't want to have to get parental consent for testing, as they were concerned that their parents would assume that they are sexually active. It made me think of what Fazeka said this morning, where parents say, while you're under my roof, you're still a child. And I loved it when she said, I will do things under your roof which will not make me a child, which is the reality that a lot of parents struggle to come to grips with. Learners also felt that it was important that they are educated before testing took place at the school. They wanted to be informed about the process of testing, the benefits of testing, as they felt that a lot of young people felt it won't happen to me, only older people become HIV positive. And they also wanted to be reassured that something that they would be taken care of, and they wanted to know what they would have to do if they tested positive. They wanted to be sure that if they tested positive, they would be followed up and that they would receive the support they needed. Just in summary, learners want HIV counseling and testing to be tested at school on condition that it is provided in a way where their concerns regarding privacy are addressed, where they are informed and educated, where the providers are experienced and trained to work with young people, and where they will be supported if they test positive. In conclusion, I hope that I have given learners a voice and that my findings have provided insight into the needs of learners with regards to school-based HCT. And my next step is to evaluate the services that are already being provided in Cape Town, and finally to develop guidelines for HIV counseling and testing in schools, along with all stakeholders, including learners. Thank you.